It's a Monday morning, so I hope everybody is doing well on this particular day and all along those lines. So definitely, it's the World Edition here on Pod TV. We're going to see what's happening around the world, see if our special guest shows up, and all along those lines. And I did have a feel-good story from this area as well, meaning the Durham, North Carolina area, and I'm sure folks will enjoy that story when I get around to it. But Tropical Storm Hillary is releasing fury on Southern California. That is definitely not a feel good story as it makes landfall on Mexico's Baja Peninsula on yesterday. And rock slides were caught on camera in Forest Falls, and crews are working to clear roadway of debris. So definitely roads are flooding as Southern California is seeing that storm and all along those lines. And nurse Lucy Letby is sentenced to life in prison for killing those newborns. She will spend the rest of her life in prison for murdering those 7 babies. And that is what is going on in that particular case as well. And in Guatemala, their anti corruption candidate won the presidency in a landslide vote. So they were campaigning on the whole notion of anti-corruption, and we know that in some of the Latin American countries there can definitely be wholesale corruption, so hopefully they'll get a chance to clean that up, and it does look like they won in a landslide and all along those lines. And that's some of the news that I'm seeing. There's other things that, of course, are happening around the world and all in that space. So let me get to some of the world news as well. I did manage the case with the British and the Guatemalan situation, and in over in Saudi Arabia, hundreds of migrants were killed by Saudi border guards. So that is something that is going on. And apparently, as there were maybe some Ethiopians trying to come across, they were the Yemen border. They some of the Ethiopians were saying that they fired on us like rain as they killed hundreds of Ethiopians. And over there in the war in Russia and Ukraine, Russia has thwarted a Ukraine drone attack on Moscow, but 2 were injured as the drone crashed into the Russian railway station. And now I'm seeing that it might have been 5 that were injured in that particular attack and all in that space. And we're talking about Guatemala. Well, it looks like in Ecuador, the Ecuadorian elections are heading to a runoff vote with the leftist candidate Gonzalez in the lead, but they're going to face a surprise second place Nobia. So it looks like they is going to have that election going into a runoff. And of course, in that country, the votes in the election have been marred by violence. And as has been reported before, Denmark and the Netherlands will be sending F-16 fighters to Ukraine. So Denmark and Netherlands pledged to give F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine as Zelensky is prepared to visit. So we are seeing that as well. And it does look like there are 5 Atlantic systems, if you're thinking about the weather, that could be making some more tropical storms and some more heated weather and all in that space. So they are saying that Tropical Storm Franklin is strengthening while Tropical Storm Emily is slightly weakening. And that's some storms that are taking place over there in the Atlantic. And it looks like Gert is out there as well. So it looks like there are 5 Atlantic systems that are out there, and we will see how they develop and what happens in that kind of way, and whether they bring weather this way or not. And India says its spacecraft heading to moon is working perfectly, and the first images of the far side of the moon have been captured by the camera off of lander Vikram. So definitely that's one of the things that we are seeing. And apparently one of the things that was said was welcome, buddy. Contact was established between Chandrayaan-2 orbiter and Chandrayaan-3 lander module. So that is something that is going on in space travel. And it looks like Russia and China are looked to advance their agendas at the BRICS Summit of Developing Countries in South Africa. So that is something that is going on. And they're saying that BRICS isn't quite China dominated, but it definitely has some significant Chinese influence and all in that kind of way. And in Canada, the Canada wildfires, soldiers were sent to British Columbia to tackle blazes that are taking place in that area. And in Tenerife, there are wildfires that are forcing over 12,000 evacuations in that part of Spain. And definitely that is some of the things that we are seeing in the world news. I might get to some other world news as well. I did say I was going to get to that feel good story in a minute as well. So we'll get ready to have that shortly. And I do see that I've got some panelists that'll be ready to join in a minute. So that'll be good to see what they've got to say. But the Hawaii governor has says that more than 1,000 people, that's 1,000 people, are still unaccounted for after the devastating wildfire. And the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has announced a $1 million donation to the American Red Cross for Maui. And I do know that some of the members of Pod TV, Dan Worthington included, and Nick Palveda, are part of that faith community. So it is good to see that they are doing some good things in outreach in that space. So that is very good news in that space. Iowa governor says voters won't give Trump a pass for skipping their state fair events and all in that space, but he definitely still has a very significant lead over the 2024 GOP candidates, according to Iowa polls. And it does look like, as of now, he'll be skipping out on the debate on the that is taking place. As a matter of fact, he announced that on Truth. So he did say he's going to be skipping the Republican presidential debate, and he has plans instead for an interview with Tucker Carlson. So he is definitely going to be doing that instead. And there was even some people I had read online that were speculating that he may turn himself in Georgia, which would definitely be a way to kind of undermine the debates and some of his competitors and all in that space. But it'll be very interesting to see what happens in that regards. And a California store owner was shot dead after an alleged dispute over their gay pride flag, according to police. So the store owner was found dead after what has been described as a senseless act of hate and all along those lines. So definitely it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out in the political landscape. And Trump backers are labeling DeSantis' comments as an attack on MAGA supporters. So definitely there are critics that are ripping DeSantis for the Trump comment. They say makes him sound like crooked Hillary. So that is something that is going on. And that is, I think, the closest candidate to Trump next to Vivek. I think Vivek and him are kind of splitting between the second and third, depending on which polls and who you are listening to and all along those lines. And it looks like there's going to be excessive heat even in other parts that are usually not all that hot, like Minnesota. So excessive heat for southern Minnesota this week that could possibly be lasting through Thursday. And I think that it could be hitting some of Nebraska as well, because they're saying excessive heat could sideline Nebraska high school athletes during peak hours and all in that space. So that is some of the news that I am seeing. And by the way, Los Angeles schools, or Los Angeles Unified, have announced school closures amid Tropical Storm Hillary. And they said that this was not an easy decision, but definitely they have felt that that was something that was necessary and all along those lines. And if you want to know about the DC area forecast, if you're in that area, they're saying that heat and humidity start and end the week. So it does look like this heat wave is hitting all over the country and all over the world as well. So that is some of the things that I am seeing in the news that are of interest to people. And all along those lines, that feel-good story that I said I was going to get to that was in Durham, and then I'll bring in my panelists and see if the guests have shown up as well. But here in Durham, where I'm based at, there was a recent noise complaint that was called in a Durham County neighborhood that turned into a moment of fun and community engagement for several deputies, according to our local sheriff department. So on Saturday evening, deputies were called to the Fox Ridge apartment here in this area in reference to a noise complaint. When they arrived, they said they found the noisy group of young people and the kids were having so much fun. The deputy said they couldn't help but join in. One of them, Deputy Rodriguez, participated in a race with the kids and was outrun, according to the sheriff's department. So it does look like they were called in for the noise and for trying to calm it down. but Deputy Barber, who took a video of the fun in their Facebook page, said, "We love having the opportunity to engage with our youngest residents in a positive way." And that is what they put on their Facebook posts and all along those lines. So it's always good when you got those kind of situations. I see that Steve is with me, so I'll bring Steve up and see what he's got going on. I'm also going to bring in I see Dan's with us as well. It looks like the guest did not make it, but Steve, and I'm gonna bring in Jacoby because I know Jacoby is part of that.
Mark, thank you so much. I'm sorry I was late. I got stuck in
problem.
traffic. Had a weird incident. I was actually going to shoot first of all, a Facebook Live today, and I was almost harassed by a resident that made threats and then took off in the car. So I'm trying to track down who that was. But real quickly, I want to go ahead and begin my monologue. Today, and I apologize for being delayed, so we're just going to start over with me kicking the show off. Welcome to World Edition. This is Steve Rao, your host, and wanted today to welcome you to the show. Today, my monologue is based on, hold on one second, Mark. I'm going to take can you hear me, Mark?
I hear you loud and clear.
Today, my monologue is based on, give me 1 second here. I want to welcome everyone to the show, and happy National Senior Citizens Day in the United States, August 21st. This day was started 3 decades ago by President Ronald Reagan, who signed a proclamation that did this and basically wanted to honor the contributions of seniors in our society. President Reagan's mother-in-law was an advocate for seniors, and the president always encouraged us to make sure that our communities were safe for seniors, that we value them wherever they are. So on this Senior Citizens Day, make sure you can call your parents, call an elderly uncle or aunt, help an elder in need. And as policymakers, let's look and do what we can to ensure that we're developing policies that are addressing elder abuse, isolation, Alzheimer's, dementia, those issues that seniors are having. And there's a lot of activities going on in Morrisville, but I want to wish everyone a happy National Senior Citizens Day. It's a great day, and we look forward to seeing all of you out there helping seniors. With that being said, the news on the street is President Trump will not be participating in the second debate. The first debate in Wisconsin this Wednesday. Hillary is the first storm to hit California in 84 years. Major flooding there. And we're going to have a really good discussion about Ukraine as we build up to Ukraine Independence Day, which is on August 24th. I'm reaching out to bring in a few guests. Yesterday, as we bring in our panel, I was in Durham, Mark Lee's city, where I was at the art gallery, the Golden Belt Art Gallery, where there's a Ukrainian art exhibits. And I met many Ukrainians. I was the keynote speaker addressing the community. It was very exciting. And it was an honor to be there in Durham. And a lot of Ukrainians in the state capital, North Carolina. There'll be a vigil. We're going to talk about Ukraine this week. 70,000 casualties, 70,000 dead, 100,000 injured, over 500,000 troops gone, Russian and Ukrainian. No end of the war in sight. But this has been the crossroads of conflict in Europe, and it's really changed the world. So we'll talk about that, Mark. So that's my opening. I'm sorry I'm late. And
no problem at all. I was actually going to bring in just really quickly, because oftentimes we hear too much about the negative aspect of what our police force does and all along those lines, but definitely they do some great work. And I do know that there's been a history of them going to schools and even doing the work within the schools and all along those lines. And I know that even though he sometimes can be have different thoughts about different aspects of the police force and all along those lines, that Jacoby has actually worked with the sheriff department in his esports kind of activities and all along those other kind of things. And of course, he does work with the Durham Bulls and the Carolina Hurricanes. So he's had some dealings with the sheriff department and all along those lines. So Jacoby, like I said, I was going to bring up before Steve did his monologue, a feel-good story. And I thought that was a beautiful feel-good story, because too often we hear the negative aspect of what the police force does and all of that aspect, but they were responding here in Durham. Steve said he was in Durham on the weekend, but they were responding, I guess, on Saturday to a noise complaint, and they heard some positive activities, and they decided to join in. It became like a race with the kids, and like the article said, they actually lost the race because Mr. Rodriguez was not the he definitely had some pounds on him, particularly compared to some of the kids and everything. But you've worked with our local sheriffs as well as some, I think, in the Wake County area and other things. So I just wondered if you could speak to that, because like I said, when I saw that article, I just knew I had to bring that up, because too often we're too busy talking about the negative aspect and the negative things that the police force does, when they do sometimes, even when they're on a call, wind up in a positive light. So I was just wondering your take on your work with them, because I do know that you have worked with them with both the Canes and the Bulls.
Oh yeah.
Well, I mean, for the most part, yes, the police get an extremely bad rap because there are bad apples that go through the department and get rehired and stuff like that. But yes, what he did was phenomenal. That's community policing. That's what we're supposed to do. When he got there, he saw that they were having fun. Didn't really see the noise complaint, but just had fun with the kids. Gave the kids a different way to reach out to them. That's actually part of the program that I'm working on with the police department, because they have the police have, many police departments have different outreach programs that people don't really realize that are there, so they don't get a chance to take advantage of that. And then also, due to the stigma that's around police themselves, people don't want to take advantage of them. So what took place was phenomenal. I mean, that will build bridges and help those individuals reach out when they're in a time of need, which is necessary. I mean, that's what the police department's there for. Hopefully, like I said, I think it should build bridges, and that's the way the police department should react. I mean, not everything is, hey, let's go in guns blazing, but that's, again, that very rare time that happens that way. But then when those mistakes happen, they're so public, and because those mistakes happen, and how many times they have, Either way, just to get to the point, that is community policing. That was beautiful what took place.
Yeah, I definitely agree that was a beautiful situation, and along those lines, bring in some of our world folks and everything along those lines. And definitely, I do agree with you, Steve, that it is, time to honor the senior citizens, and we've actually got one of our seniors that is with us. So we'll see what Dan's got to say about this and all along.
I just got a call from Australia. Just make sure Shaquille's not backstage.
I'm bringing Shaquille up. I was getting ready to do that next.
Okay. All right, Shaquille, thank you. I think you called me. Hey, Shaquille.
It's nice to know that you've got my number stored. I just got a call from Australia. Not I just got a call from Shaquille. I just got a call from Australia.
I knew it was you. I apologize. Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry about that. I lost it.
I do want to just make a comment on this policing issue and the issue that what Jacoby just said. Look, I'm limited in what I can say about police in the United States. But as I've expressed numerous times on the show, I have a very poor view of the institution of policing around the world. I'll mostly I won't say around the world. I'll focus on Western countries, and I can talk about the US as well. But it's not just about when they go in gun blazing and they've shot somebody they shouldn't have shot. It's the little things. It's the stop and frisk stuff they're doing in New York. Now, people can blame the mayor, Giuliani, for that. But, where was the pushback from police? Where was the pushback? How many times did somebody get pulled over? And it's just like par for course. Hey, do you mind if we search your car? You got any guns in the back of your car? I'm talking about America now. You got any guns or drugs in the back of your car? You mind if we search? No, piss off. You got absolutely no probable cause. You've got no reason to search. And if I say no, then all of a sudden you're going to try and find some reason to try and search me. I mean, the Supreme Court has had to have rulings based on how long they can detain you while they wait for sniffer dogs to come. If the reason they pulled you over was for a speeding ticket. How about you just stop messing with us? Now, you know, in Australia, for example, we use kilometres per hour here. The speed limit in most states, the speed limit around school zones is 40 kilometres an hour. And what they did was they introduced a thing that said if you go 5 kilometres over that, that's 3 miles roughly, over that speed limit, you're going to get fined. Now, I understand why. They justified that because they said, look, you know, young kids are getting hit by cars. But all you did was you caused people to look at their speedometers instead of looking at the road and looking around them because they were too scared to get a speeding ticket. Well, I've got a question for you. How many police officers have been sitting in the passenger side while another police officer is driving a car and they've seen their partner speeding by 10 kilometres or 10 miles an hour over the speed limit? And how many of them have said to their mate, listen, pull over, walked around the other side of the car and given their friend a speeding ticket? I bet none of them have. Why? Because it'd be ridiculous. Because you couldn't work at a workplace where you're going around giving your fellow worker a speeding ticket. Nobody could survive in a workplace like that. Fair enough. I understand. But if you're not going to do that to each other because it's ridiculous, why would you do it to us? Why are you doing it to the citizenry? And then when you actually catch them out and you catch them dead to rights, what do? They go running to the police union and they say, oh, it's a stressful job. Background noise.
Yeah. Okay. Hold on. Let's see if I can figure out what it. Yep, that's where it was. It was on Dan.
What do? They go running to the police union and they say, Dan, you have to mute yourself, buddy. There's a bit of background at your end.
Not doing anything.
They go running to the police union and they go, oh, you know, it's a stressful job. You know, it's so hard. It's so whatever. You know, when your child who's 17 or 18 years old gets interviewed by the police read them their rights, and then they say, well, you know, just talk to us. We're your friends. We're here to make it better. We just want to give you an opportunity to clear things up. We just want to hear your side of the story. Well, notice how when those police officers that killed George Floyd, did any of them talk to the police investigators by themselves? No. They had police union reps in the room. They had their lawyers in the room. They won't talk to the police, but they expect you to. Notice how, you know, they're so unhappy with internal affairs. Oh, they're the police, right? Don't be a rat. Don't talk to internal affairs if you're a police officer. But they come and talk to the citizenry and, oh, yeah, you better snitch on your mate. It's this sort of attitude. And then when you do actually catch them dead to rights, there's never any responsibility taken. There's never any, look, yep, I screwed up. I should have done that. Or we as a police department have acted in a way that really we shouldn't have acted. So we're going to make changes and we're going to fix things. You never hear that. After George Floyd died, there was a very anti-police movement that went all over the world. And what did we see? Here in Australia, where we've not had slavery, we haven't had the same issues. We've had other issues that have been somewhat similar, but it hasn't been the same as it has been in the US. We've had police officers take the knee here in Australia, and then the next day go back and do exactly the same sort of stuff. Or they'll sit there and they'll say, okay, well, maybe we'll treat people of colour and black people just a little bit differently, okay? We'll put a couple of other safety mechanisms in, but we're not going to actually recognise the flaws of our system. That's what policing is. That's what government is. That's why I'm so anti-government. But this is what policing is. They never take your responsibility, but they expect you to take responsibility. Okay? They're more than happy to throw your kid up against the wall at 17 or 15 years of age or whatever and pat them down and search them. But their kids, oh, no, you can't do that. Their kids are different. They'll tell your kids that they should talk to the police, but they'll tell their own kids that they should never talk to the police. First thing that any police officer or a district attorney will do is say to their child, don't ever speak to the police. But they expect your kids to do that. It's awful. I think that policing and the justice system should be reformed all over the Western world, and I think it's a slight on our society.
Hey, Shaquille, along those same lines, I'd love to hear people's thoughts about this, but as part of that, there is also some things that go on in society. I was having the privilege recently of helping a friend. They've actually been on this show before, that is doing some research around pandas and pans and all in that space. But they are definitely finding that some of the mental health issues that are going on, because that's what panda and pans have to deal with and everything, because some of these people are acting out, and it's a neurological situation versus or a mental situation versus anything else, and it can be diagnosed and it can be treated, but a lot of times it is not known. And I've been learning a lot of this from Kelly Jones and everything until later on and everything. So that being said, a lot of the police aren't trained in that. I know that they've been notions that the police need to have social workers that go out with them, because some of these incidences could probably be calmed down, even some of our domestic violence situations, if they knew how to better handle the situations that exist. Because I think that in some cases they wind up being misdiagnosed, or sometimes even going into the legal system because of the way that things are handled and not correctly diagnosed from a sociological or psychological standpoint. So I just wondering y'all's take on that, because I do think that police could be definitely better trained how to deal.
So my mother worked for, and I'm playing, fast and loose with the definitions here, but my mother worked for essentially a mental health crisis response team. Mm-hmm. So she worked with the police and attended scenarios where somebody with a mental health disorder was having an issue. And I think that's positive. I think the United States would be well served to incorporate a system like that. I don't think it's practical that a social worker is going to accompany a police officer on every single. What are you going to do? I mean, what are you going to put a social worker in every police car? That's not a practical solution. But body cams is very interesting because why was it that the police union was so against body cams? Now, body cams in some cases have actually saved police officers' jobs where there's been accusations against them where they haven't done anything wrong. And so now they're more for it. But originally, they didn't want there to be that sort of transparency, right? I would say that anybody who's, for lack of better words, customer-facing or public-facing should have the ability to be able to talk people down, should have the ability to, be able to de-escalate a situation, right? Jatovia and I, we meet there in person. Next time I'm in Durham, we meet there in person. We're having a few drinks, and Jatovia and I just get into it, right? Jatovia says something I don't like, and I say something Jatovia doesn't like. We end up having a punch-on, all right? We'll ignore the fact that I'm not a citizen, so I wouldn't do anything wrong. But we end up having a punch-up, right? And then the police come, and they attend. And Jatovia's very nice and polite and calm and relaxed. But it was actually Jatovia's fault. Jatovia threw the first punch. It was actually all on him. He's terrible. I was actually the person in the right. But Jatovia was very calm, very articulate, spoke to the police. And I act like a hothead, right? And I'm telling the police where to go, and I don't like you, and why do you have such a big gun? And I'm just being horrible to the police. Who do you think is going to get arrested? Who do you think is going to get arrested? Jatovia or me? It's going to be me. I'm going to get arrested. Now, maybe 6 months later when it's in court, it comes out that Jatovia threw the first punch. But who's going to get arrested? It's going to be me, because they're going to make a judgment call. And the point that I'm trying to make by that is it's often how you treat the police. And police often say that. They're like, if you treat us with respect, we'll treat you with respect. So what are you saying? That if I don't treat you with respect, I'm going to get arrested, or I'm going to have an enhanced search because I didn't treat you with respect? So what? You're a police officer, you got a badge and a gun, and you're walking around going, oh, I've got a different job to the rest of you, right? So what do you do? Oh, I'm an accountant. What about you? What do you do? Oh, I'm a police officer. Don't mess with me. And you're being a smart ass to that police officer. Now, all of a sudden, you're getting searched, you're getting thrown up against a wall, you're getting arrested because you're being a smart ass to a police officer. That's not what policing is supposed to be. You're not supposed to use your police powers and your authority to just go after people and just, show them who's boss because you don't like their attitude. That's ridiculous. And for those of you that have been a child once or a teenager and a rebellious teenager like me, you ever had a police officer tell you to wipe that smirk off your face? Don't look at me like that. Take that smirk off your face. You behave yourself. Piss off. Who the hell are you? What, because you got a blue shirt on, you're going to start telling me what facial expressions I'm allowed to have? Oh, if you want to be a smart ass, I'll arrest you. Really? Really? That's what policing is? And that's the thing, you don't worry about these issues like George Floyd and what was that lady's name who got shot and all that. Don't worry about that stuff. Right? That stuff happens. That sort of stuff happens because at the base level, in the everyday interactions that police have with everyday people, okay, they get away with things that they really shouldn't, and other police officers turn a blind eye, okay, because we're all human. I'm not trying to hold them to a degree that's unreasonable, okay? But you've been a smart ass to a police officer and they sort of, hit your head on the side of the car as they put you in the back seat, right? You've been a bit horrible to a police officer, so they twist your wrist up a little bit too hard, or they tighten the handcuffs way more than it needs to be. They use just a little bit more force because they've lost their cool and they're a bit angry. They're going to get away with it because all the other police officers will turn a blind eye and maybe think that you deserved it. But I can't go to Utah and go up to Dan and be a bit upset with Dan and think, oh, Dan deserves it. I'm just going to twist his arm around. I can't do that. I'd get arrested. So why do they get to do it? And that's the thing. It's all those so-called good officers that turn a blind eye when their fellow officer is overstepping the mark. And that's where it starts. And then all of a sudden, you got somebody getting shot. Then all of a sudden, you got somebody saying, well, you see that guy over there, right? He doesn't have a gold chain on. He's wearing his pants a bit low. Maybe he's got a skin color that I reckon I can get away with this. And then they go after that person and they abuse them or shoot them or use excessive force and nothing happens to them. Police chiefs and etc. come out and they'll say, oh, well, I'll finish my rant at this. On Netflix, there's a series called How to Fix a Drug Scandal, where the people that were testing the drugs either weren't testing the drugs at all or were taking the drugs themselves. And the DA comes out and she goes, oh, well, we're not going to throw out all cases. We're just going to throw out these ones where it was proven that there was some misbehavior, but we're not going to throw them all out. Can you imagine if a company tried doing that? Can you imagine if you tried doing that? If you said that to government, how you'd go? That's the problem. That's where the problem starts. So, yeah, I think we need... I'm not going to say that we should defund the police because I think that's ridiculous. I don't think we should get rid of the police because I think that's ridiculous. Okay? The police have a very important role to play. But police need to be responsible, and I don't blame everyday officers. I blame the brass for this. I blame the higher-ups for this because they are so power-hungry and they think they're a power unto themselves, and they're not. And it should be reformed. And I'll finish my rant at that. Dan, over to you.
Yeah, I hear you. I see your point, Shaq. Yeah, I think any time. No, I mean, it's the thing is, whenever I have an opportunity to be approached by police, I'm very polite and very respectful. As you suggest, that's the best way to get along with it. I think a lot of times when these things blow up, it's because people are disrespectful or have an attitude. And, that's just dumb. Why would you do that? Because that's just asking for it, right?
But why shouldn't I be able to do that? If Steve Rao's a politician, right? So let's say I live over
because there. It's disrespectful, Shaq.
Yeah, okay, so what? So
it's dumb.
So Steve Rao's a politician, right? He lives there in North Carolina. I'm in North Carolina. I don't like the policy that Steve Rao has just voted in favour. Right?
Yeah, but Steve Rao's not a police officer, so you.
Okay, so what? Police officers are these elevated human beings that are so much better than the rest of us, are they?
Well, no, because a police officer has a gun.
Yeah,
He's
well,
standing over you at the edge of your car. If you want to be stupid, be stupid. I mean, it's sort of like Chris Rock had a video about this, right? It's sort of
yeah.
like, why would
So
you aggravate a guy with a gun or a gal with a gun? That just makes no sense, right?
So
Yeah.
basically, what you're saying, Dan, is that I should not aggravate the person. So with Steve Rao, I can go off at him and I can be as disrespectful as I like. That's not going to be a problem. But the guy,
Because he doesn't have a gun, no.
Yeah, right.
Unless
But
he
the
does
guy
have a gun, then I wouldn't be doing that.
So the guy that's protecting Steve Rao, because he's a presidential candidate, the guy who's protecting Steve Rao, I shouldn't be a smartass to him. I should be yes sir, no sir, 3 bags full sir, because you have a gun and you might shoot me. Because
No,
you
it's
are
not the
so
gun.
much better than me.
It's a respect for authority, that's important to do.
Well, Dan, I have no respect for authority. I've seen the
Well,
way
I can see that. I can see that. Shaq.
I've seen the way that governments have run
But
Western countries.
Shaq,
and I'm not
if
gonna
you come to
respect them at all.
if you come to the United States and you get in a row with a police officer, I suggest you show respect.
No,
just
well,
for your own safety.
I will in the US because they might shoot me. But but I won't like it. It'll be begrudging.
Well, I mean, you'd have the same problem in Australia.
Yeah, well, they tend not to shoot you as
They'll probably tase you.
Let's switch topic. Guys, I'm running out of. I have to leave early, but
I will say to in defense, right? I'm protected by police officers in many countries. Okay, and those countries where the police, specifically state police, aren't protecting me, like the United States, I've never had a problem. They've normally been polite. They've normally been very friendly. I haven't had an issue, but it's not the point. The reality is that if the threat is, if I'm a smartass to you, you are going to use your powers in order to mess with me, it's not on. And I think that the institution of policing should reflect on that and reflect, especially in the wake of George Floyd. They should reflect on how they're acting. They should, try to maybe have a bit of reform rather than this sort of power onto themselves. If I'm working for a bank and you come in for a home loan and I don't like your shirt or I think you're being a smartass and I go, well, I'm going to mess with you. I'm going to cancel your credit cards and deny your home loan. And then you go and make a complaint to head office. Head office is probably going to look at it and go, actually, you know what? There was no real reason for your credit cards to be cancelled. There was no reason for us not to approve your home loan. We're going to approve it. But if you go in and you say to the police, look, I was having a really bad day that day, okay? And, the police officer just rubbed me the wrong way. But you know what? He's done all this stuff to me and, it's just not necessary. Do you think the police, higher up in the police, do you think they're going to turn around and say, yeah, look, you're right. We didn't really need to go down that path, and then you lit a cigarette. The police officer told you to put the cigarette out, so you threw it on the ground. Then he fined you for littering, and then he made you pick it up, and then he fined you for jaywalking. You got arrested. Do you think that the higher ups in the police department would say, "Okay, look, we shouldn't have done that"? Of course not. And if
actually,
wrong,
Jack,
if the police officer does something wrong, right? And they say, I was having a bad day that day, the police union will stand behind them. In no other industry does that happen. Why do they get away with it?
Well, I tell you, I actually have made a complaint against a police officer who was abusive, and he was handled, and I got an apology.
So
Steve, over to you before you leave. He's left.
Steve's gone already. But I was going to ask Jacoby something, because one of the things that I get frustrated
I'd like to hear Jatovi's response to
it's something I get frustrated by, and it's something I get frustrated by, and Jacoby may have some thoughts about this as well. But to some degree, and I'm going to use a baseball analogy and everything, it does seem that sometimes the police chiefs and everything almost become like a minor league and everything, because we know that even here in Durham, that as soon as they got in a little bit of hot water, then they went to another city. Matter of fact, one of our police chiefs went over to Memphis, where they also dealt with other things. So it does seem that sometimes our police chiefs go from like the frying pan to the pot or the pot to the frying pan. So they do a lot of this almost moving around kind of a situation as well. And sometimes they get to avoid situations, or sometimes they even build great community relationships. And then it's like, okay, I've got a better opportunity, so I'm going to go to the next town over and all in that space. So that's where I sometimes get frustrated. I get it. I mean, it's a job. You want to you want to advance in your job, so you might want to go to a bigger and better city, but it can be frustrating to those that live in the city when it's happened, I think 2 or 3 times in the last 5 years and everything. So I just wanted your take on that, because you've worked with the police. So I'm going like, sometimes when they build these positive programs, then they're like, all right, I'm off to Memphis. And of course, when
I worked for the police as well. I was a police trainer, by the way. I worked at the police academy training police officers. So I think I know policing inside and out. And one of my specialties was interrogation techniques. So I know policing pretty well. As I said, I'm not for defunding the police, and I certainly don't think that we should have no police, or would be better off without them. But I think there should be a bit more responsibility shown and a little bit more humility shown by police. And Dan, that may well be the case that you made a complaint and got an apology, but there's lots of people that have made complaints that didn't. And I was watching just the last few days. I fell asleep in front of the TV. An episode of Cops came up, and it was a 13-year-old boy that was having an argument with his stepfather, and the police put him in the back of the police car and told his parents that they were just going to scare him, right? And the police officer came over and told the 13-year-old that if he keeps carrying on like that next time he'll be going to jail. There was no jailable offense, but the 13-year-old wouldn't have known that. No questions at all about why the 13-year-old was acting up. No questions at all about what was actually happening within that house. And this was a recent episode. So this has happened since the Gabriel Fernandez situation that was on Netflix in California, where that kid reached out to the police. His teachers reached out to the police. Other caregivers reached out to the police and said, I think this kid's being abused. And what did the police do? They did exactly the same thing. Put that kid in the back seat, threatened the kid, scared the kid. And so the kid realized the police are not people that are going to help me. Okay? Why is that okay? And you know why? Because the police just assumed, well, if the parents say the kid's acting up, the kid must be acting up, so we'll step in and try to straighten the kid out with absolutely no care or consideration. Now, is that because they need more training? I don't know. Maybe showing less partiality in your dealings with the public would go a long way.
But Shaquille,
maybe if I'm wearing $1,000 suit and I tell you that guy over there who's just wearing some cheap clothes, and whatever, and doesn't look like he's real high society, and I tell you that person did something to me, how about not assuming that I must be correct and that guy must be in the wrong just because you think that I've got money and that guy doesn't? How about actually being impartial and fair? But you know what? If that guy makes a complaint to the police, what do you think is going to happen? Absolutely nothing. And that's the thing.
I hear what you're saying, but Shaquille, on the flip side of that, and I think Jacoby was also having some thoughts, how many times have we seen the serial killer that has been out there and all along those lines, and then when they get to talking to the residents, we find out that there were actually complaints made to the police about said individual, but the police were not able to do anything about it, because in certain states there are like I just recently learned it in certain things, even with domestic violence, they are hesitant to arrest somebody because they don't want to put somebody in that position of being another statistic. So that's something else that we believe.
With serial killers, that's an issue of the law versus an issue of policing. But the bottom line is, if you are arrested, or if you have interaction with the police, and don't be ridiculous about this, but if you've got interaction with the police, don't talk to them. Why would you? What possible reason would you? The proof of the pudding. First of all, exercise your Sixth Amendment rights. I don't know why Supreme Court Justice Scalise has the opinion that he has about your Fifth Amendment rights, but if you're in the United States, exercise your Sixth Amendment rights and don't talk to the police, tell them you want a lawyer, and leave it at that, okay? But if you want proof of that, all you have to do is to look at what police do when they're being investigated. what district attorneys do when they're being investigated. They don't talk to the police. So if it's good enough for them not to talk to the police, it's good enough for you not to talk to the police. Or go up with Sasha where, hey, you can have a lawyer in Canada, but you are not entitled to have a lawyer with you while you are being interviewed by the police. You can tell the police that you don't want to talk to them, but they can still interview you, and you have no ability to end the interview. That's really awesome, Canada. But I think Canada might take a leaf out of Australia's book, because in New South Wales, if you exercise your right to silence in New South Wales, under some circumstances, your right to silence can be used against you in a court of law. The fact that you weren't prepared to talk to the police can be used as evidence against you in a court of law in New South Wales and Australia. Or how about the UK, where you're under arrest? You have the right to remain silent, but if you do not tell us something now that you later rely on in court, it can injure your defense. How about those sorts of rights? No, policing needs to be brought back down to where it should be. You are here to protect and serve the public. You are not a power onto yourself.
Shaquille, speaking about Canada and police in Canada, as you're saying, to protect the order, protect the public, police has to have authority to stop those who are not protecting the law and order and have to be stopped. In Canada, you have to be completely brain absent to resist to police, and not because they have guns. I don't know, in some other countries may be different, but in Canada, those who recruited to police, they have enormous physique appearance, and they're physically so strong that they will overpower you without any gun. They will just make you disabled instantly. So the last thing what anyone would think is how to resist the police, not in their right mind.
So by your analogy, Sasha, I'm 6'1".
Yep.
Shaquille O'Neal is 7 foot
Yeah.
4 or something. I don't know how tall he is, but he's much bigger than me.
Okay.
He's much more muscular than me. All of that. By your reasoning, Shaquille O'Neal says to me, "Oi, what's in your car?" And I say, "Piss off. It's got nothing to do with you." I'm supposed to go, "Oh, no, he's a really big guy and he has a gun. Oh, I better not be a smartass to the guy." That's what I'm supposed to do.
Wait a sec. You supposedly, in your example, Shaquille O'Neal is a big guy. He's a policeman, and you are the driver of a car, right? That's what you have in mind?
No, I'm not saying if he was a policeman. The point that I'm trying to make is that whether somebody is physically bigger than me or whether somebody has a gun, right? The idea that if they did something to me, it would be a crime unless they're wearing a blue shirt, in which case, even if they have violated my rights, I've got no choice but to go, "Oh, yes, sir. No, sir. Thank you very much, sir. You are such an amazing, great human being." No, you're not some fine, upstanding member of the community that's better than me because you've got a blue shirt on. Who the hell do you think you are?
No, listen, in Canada, it works this way. If policeman orders you to do something or asking you something, so you have to cooperate 100%. That goes without saying.
If that's what the law is.
However, if you believe that he overstepped the law and he was rude to you or anything else, you can complain, you can sue, you have a lot of avenues open to you, but not at the time and the place when you are ordered to do something or not.
Sasha, do you honestly think that if I lived in Canada, right, and I'm broke, I'm missing teeth, I've got a few scars across my face, maybe I've got a drug problem, right? Maybe I've like, one of those meth people that have got like the sores and the bugs under their skin or whatever they reckon they've got, right? And a police officer just came over and messed with me. And I walked down the police station a week later and say, "Listen, I've been thinking about this for a week, and it just really, it's just really upset me that Officer John Smith did this to me last week. Do you think I'd be taken seriously? Do you really think that the police, internal affairs, all that, would really take me seriously? Of course they wouldn't take me seriously. You know why? Because the police only mess with the people that they don't think can protect themselves. Ice-T sung that song, No Lives Matter, right? That's who the police mess with. They mess with the people that they don't think can defend themselves. They mess with the people that they're not going to mess with somebody who they think will sue their ass. Jatovi, you started this off and I've reacted to it. I think I've made my thoughts and feelings on police perfectly clear. Over to you.
I mean, the police overall, for the most part, those within the department are decent individuals. There are issues with the policing itself. Stop and frisk is an example that you had brought up, and that's an example that got utilized and actually was seen as a bigoted approach because of the way that it was implemented. There are problems with the police department, yes. Defund the police was not about defunding the police. Defund the police argument was about actually moving the money to a more trainable area so you can react to these social problems that come about. Domestic violence cases, police go to mostly, they go to those a lot. That is also one of the most dangerous things that they have to go to. So sending someone there who can negotiate and help out, if, say, for example, one of the things that you had posted that we had talked about, where the young individual I think she was autistic, and the police arrested her. Well, they should have sent somebody who could actually de-escalate and understand that individual better, because the weight, again, defund was more so.
It wasn't the arresting of her that was the problem. It was why they arrested her that was the problem.
It was because the individual who arrested her got really heated and really took it out on her.
Yeah,
there was a lot. Jack, you just ran it for 30 minutes. So please allow me to finish. You asked me a question.
Here we go again. You
ran it for 30, 40 minutes. You ran it for 30, 40 minutes. Ask me a question to respond.
Yeah, if you're going to use an example, be clear about the example. She was arrested because the police officer said that she said something wrong.
I read the same article. I saw the same thing. Because you have a different view of it, let me speak, okay? You just ran it for 30, 40 minutes, so allow me to respond. So that is an example of the police not de-escalating the situation, and they could have utilized somebody there who could have helped with the situation. Again, that is what the defund the police movement was, or push was. Its wording was incorrect because people took it as they want to take money and stop having the police department, which is incorrect. We do need a police department. We do need police, and we do need good policing, which is what Mark brought up earlier, which is what the police officer in Durham, when he was responding to a noise complaint, actually had a better interaction with those kids, those families, and those individuals at that community. So that community can now reach out and trust that police officer more. Because again, the majority of these people are good people. Yes, there are bad individuals in the police department, and there are bad things that we have to overcome. But we cannot continue to berate the good people and expecting them to continue to be good when all they are in is a thankless job that pays them so little that they are so underappreciated, and they end up leaving that department. And that's what's happening to our teachers and a lot of other areas.
Well, they're certainly not underpaid,
and that becomes a problem.
They're certainly not underpaid.
I can agree there are problems in the police department. I can agree that there are things that need to be changed. I can also agree there are things that the community needs to take part in more and understand that are there and take advantage of more. But that's a bridge that we have to build back because it's been burned down on.
Well, let them build it back. Let them build it back. They're certainly not underpaid in Australia. They might be underpaid in the US in some states. They're certainly not underpaid in Australia. And let me just ask something. If we're supposed to give them, you know, some credit here, okay, well, most of them are good people, which I don't agree with, but let's just say that I did. Most of them are good people. Well, why don't they treat us the same? Why don't they treat us with most of you as a
Your
good people? I'm
example
not going
that
to
you
give
brought
you
up
a little
from cops.
ticket for this or that. Excuse me?
You brought up an example to prove your point, and it was a TV show. A TV show is scripted. A TV show is also there to get people to watch. And Cops is known for this. So your example was an extreme example. It
It's
is
not
not
an extreme
actually a
example.
relevant example,
No,
and it would
no,
be a poor example to
listen, it's not.
justify that.
It's
But
not.
again,
Jacoby, don't diminish.
Listen real quick.
Don't
We
diminish.
agree that there are problems in the police department. And
Don't
since
diminish
we've
what I've said.
ranted for a little while and Dan has his hand up, let's let Dan speak.
No, I just want to respond to you. Don't diminish what I've said by trying to insinuate that I can't tell the difference between a scripted TV show and a general TV show. Okay, I've worked with and I'm a big supporter of the Innocence Project in the United States. Okay, and I've put my own money behind some of the reforms that the Innocence Project has suggested that state governments over there.
What project has cops suggested?
So when I say, because our stuff is not as publicized as what it is in the US, when I see something which I consider to be the police overstepping the mark, I'm going to call it out. And I think the society would be far better served if people like me, who know a bit about the law, a little bit about police procedure.
You're not the only one who knows about the law. You're not the only one who knows about policing. Mark tried to tell you that I've worked with the police department just as you have. So you cannot say that you're the only one. Dan is in the law.
I didn't say that. I just
Canada.
I didn't say that I was the only one. I just said I think it'd be better served if more people spoke up. If more people spoke up when they saw something that was wrong.
Yeah, we get ready to wrap up. Let's hear from Dan, and then I was actually going to bring up another issue that we brought up, but we'll get to that tomorrow. Dan, please.
The overwhelming number of police officers that serve, I think, are there because they want to serve the public good. I think there are a few bad apples. I think the extreme situations that the police officers get put in color their perspective about the danger that they could face ultimately. That colors how they approach a traffic stop or anything else because of the bad things that happen to police officers when that happens. Civility is a very important part of any stable government and stable society. We should show civility and respect to one another, whether we're civilians or police officers or anything else. For the most part, except with one exception, I've always experienced civility from police officers when they've stopped me or had a question about my behavior. The one exception was a one-off, and I took care of that. Yes, the fact I'm a lawyer and everything else helps, but it's still, Shaq, you're right. Jacoby, you're right. And I think that we can do a lot to improve the service of how policing is done in the United States and other parts of the world to be sensitive. A lot of guys and gals in a domestic dispute are wanting to do suicide by cop. That's one of the things that they're trying to, because they're frustrated, don't know what to do. They want it to end. Some guys are just doing it because they'll have the opportunity to pull their gun and get their asses shot, and then it's over for them, right? I've seen that happen. So you're right. There has to be a way to kind of talk people down. If people are committed to suicide by cop, it's a little hard to, change it otherwise. But I think this has been a good debate, a good discussion, and I appreciate both perspectives.
Yep, definitely. And on that note, we're going to hold on. We're going to wrap up.
Let me just ask you a question, a real quick question, Dan. You said that most police officers are good. Let me just ask you this one question. do you believe that most police officers will have given somebody a ticket for something that they have seen their fellow officer do that they haven't given their fellow officer a ticket for?
You're asking me? I don't understand the question.
I was asking Dan.
Well, actually, it's time to end the show, but we can get to this and we can definitely continue this discussion tomorrow because we've got Economics Monday as well. And I think that David M. Walker will be at that. So I've got to get to that show if Kim hasn't already gotten there. I was going to get to the senior citizens, but we can talk about that tomorrow because that is a important issue as well. And some of the care needs to be better. I think Dan would even agree with that as well in some places and all along those lines, even though there are some great senior centers that are doing great work and all along those lines. But that's a whole nother conversation, and maybe we'll get to some of that on tomorrow. But I've enjoyed this conversation around policing and everything. But right now it's time to get to Economics Monday.